Okay, so welcome to the October 19th, 2020 meeting of the CB6 Housing, Homeless, and Human Rights Committee. My name is Corinne Vanderdonk, and I am the chair of the CB6 Housing, Homeless, and Human Rights Committee. This meeting is called to order at 6:34 p.m. Tonight, we are joined by Assistant District Manager Cody Osterman. Tonight, the meeting, the minutes will be taken by Anju Suresh. Thank you, Anju. We will now, members of the public, you can raise any questions or comments that you have through the Q&A feature of Zoom. If there is time following the committee's discussion, we will field questions from the public. Any questions that we do not have time to answer during this meeting will be answered by our staff at a later date. We will now take attendance by roll call. Cody will conduct the roll call.
Oh, all right, one moment. All right. Members of the committee, I will call your name and you'll unmute yourselves. When your name is called, please say present. I will announce if there is a quorum. Kyle Athide. Kyle is here. He doesn't seem to be connected by audio. He is present. Joan Berenbaum.
Present.
Thank you, Joan. Claire Brennan. Andrew Gross. Abigail Cruzmark.
Present.
Rich Mintz.
Present.
Karen Moore. Raj Nair. Matt Roberts.
Present.
Anju Suresh.
Present.
All right. Corinne Vanderdonk.
Present.
Jeff Zellen. Kyle, it looks like you've joined by audio now. Are you good?
Can you hear me? I'm present.
Yes, thank you. All right, you've got 7 members, which is a quorum.
Right, thank you, Cody. The agenda for tonight's meeting was distributed ahead of time by the board office and appears on the screen before you.
It will momentarily. 1 second, please.
Thanks, Cody. Members of the public, please note there is no agenda item on the forthcoming family homeless shelter at the site of the former Renwick Hotel. The Department of Homeless Services will be joining our November meeting to speak on this new shelter. Committee members, if there's no objection, we will adopt the agenda as stated. Members of either committee, if you object to adopting the agenda, you may raise your hand through Zoom. Seeing that there is no objections, there's no, the agenda for tonight's meeting is adopted. The minutes from the September 21st meeting were drafted but not reviewed. Thank you, Abby, and will be voted on next month. Some ground rules. In order to conduct an efficient meeting, let's observe a few ground rules. No one may speak until granted the floor. Committee members, if you have a question about committee business or wish to make a motion, please raise your hand through Zoom. The chat function should not be used for committee business or questions about agenda topics. All remarks should be made on the record by raising your hand through Zoom. Chat should only be used to alert us to any technical difficulties you're having or to state in writing information like an email address that was already stated aloud on the record during the meeting. When a committee member is given the floor to speak, I will identify you and you can unmute yourself so that you can speak. We are required by executive order to create a verbatim transcript of the meeting. So please keep your questions and comments succinct and germane to the discussion. And the order of the adopted agenda will be 1, the presentation by Manhattan Community Board 10 on their support for a permanent exhibit on the exonerated 5 in Central Park. Welcome CB10, I'm looking forward to hearing from you. 2, discussion on 421A fraud and rent overcharges in Community Board 6. 3, the chair's report, and 4, old and new business, where we will briefly give you some basic information on the Renwick Hotel Shelter. And then agenda item 1 and 2 will be led by Vice Chair Rich Mintz, who will take it away from here.
Thank you. I prepared notes to speak on this in the event that we weren't able to get our visitors from Manhattan Community Board 10 to join. But to our delight, we have both Cicely Harris, the chair of Community Board 10, and Karen Horry, Parks Committee chair of Community Board 10. I think it's the two of you and no others, right? So is it Horry or Ori? How do you say
Ori.
Ori,
Silent.
Okay, like the county in South Carolina, right?
Yeah,
Ori County. Yeah. All right, so I'll cede the floor to the two of you since I think you have a presentation.
Yes, and I'll be able to share my screen. Cicely, did you want to say something?
Really quickly, Karen, thank you. First of all, thank you so much, CB6, for allowing us to have a conversation tonight. To the chair of your committee, Karen and Rich, thank you all for allowing us to have this opportunity to speak and just share with you a little bit about our Exonerated 5 initiative, how it came to be, and the purpose behind it, and why we feel it's important, not just for CB10 to talk about it, and not just for the boards that sit around Central Park, but for us as a community in Manhattan to have this conversation, to talk about these ideas of social justice and how we cannot ignore it, but also use it as a educational tool. And what better place than Central Park? Karen, if you want to go ahead and talk about it and share the presentation. And just to let you know, there is a resolution. You do have that, Rich, and you do have the resolution?
We do. It was
Okay.
shared with the committee ahead of the meeting, and when you're done sharing your screen, we'll put it up on the screen for everyone.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
So I'll start to share my screen. Yes, good evening, everyone. So this is our presentation. It's pretty lengthy, so I'll try to go through it as quickly as I can. So we're looking at a commemoration to be done by, oh, and I'm sorry, I'm already at the end. Sorry, got to go through here to the beginning. So we're looking to have a commemoration by 2022. So we just, we've begun this initiative as of 2019. So our mission is twofold: to create an exhibit which would be permanent, Parks and Recreation educational commemoration in Central Park to honor the Exonerated 5 and social justice reform by April 2022, and also to raise awareness and sensitivity to a systemic and institutionalized pattern of racial injustice and the need for reform. We envision a permanent commemoration which will exemplify the fortitude and resiliency of the 5 young boys who now known as the Exonerated 5, and to the need for social justice reform again. We propose a commemorative permanent art piece sited in the northeast section of Central Park that celebrates not only the extraordinary diversity and history of our community, but also pointing to the city's aspirations for the future. These 5 young boys at the time hailed from the Harlem area adjacent to the northern end of the park near 110th Street. Central Park was an oasis in the midst of the urban concrete. However, these young boys did not have the same access to the park. It was limited by the algae-dominated mere and dilapidated facilities, which was not the norm for the more affluent areas of the park. But nevertheless, these young boys viewed the park as their backyard. So on April 19th, 1989, these young boys would experience the onset of an unimaginable blight in their young lives that no one should ever have to endure. The high-profile case brought to the light the prevalence of racial profiling, discrimination, and inequality in the media and legal system. So these next slides are simply our resolution, so you can take a look at that. We have here a piece on Mrs. Sharon Salam, mother of Yusef Salam, member of the Exonerated 5, who explains so poignantly the impact of that this horrific case had on their families, and how now that the prison experience is over, they are still trying to move toward forgiveness and also rebuilding their lives. The story of the Exonerated 5 continues to be told through acclaimed storytellers in print, film, and TV. The filmmaker and author Sarah Burns has chronicled the case, and also she and her father worked on the award-winning documentary, The Central Park 5. And Sarah Burns has also been involved directly with our efforts. Then we have When They See Us, the series by Ava DuVernay, award-winning series by Ava DuVernay, and the special by Oprah Winfrey on When They See Us Now. The goals for In-Park Commemoration are to, 1, shed light on the prejudice, hatred, and ultimately unnecessary incarcerations that occur due to the inequities inherent in the American justice system, which span over decades in this country. To inform, engage, and activate the public in building a path to healing for Black and Latinx communities in Harlem, the nation, and throughout the world. And we also would like to do away with the school to prison pipeline, which is very real in our society. Improvements were made to the northern end of the park in 1989 following the Central Park jogger case. Work on the ravine located in the northern part of the park was completed by 1992. The Central Park Conservancy announced a $51 million campaign for upgrades in 1993, resulting in the restoration of bridle trails, the mall, the Harlem Mere, the North Woods, and the construction of the Dana Discovery Center at the Harlem Mere. I'd just like to point out also that high imprisonment rates plague our communities in Harlem and East Harlem. And this inequitable disparity has been made even more evident as a result of the ravages of COVID-19. The park is the most natural location for a commemoration since its location is burned into the collective memories of New Yorkers as a major turning point in our city's history. Doing an in-park commemoration would be so to speak, a going full circle in terms of going back to the origin of where this horrific miscarriage of justice took place. So we're looking at honoring the resiliency and experiences of the Exonerated 5 who survived the incarceration period, bringing attention to the pervasiveness of racial injustice within the criminal justice system with special attention to the experiences of young people of color. And also just sharing the lived experiences of people who are victimized by the criminal justice system and demonstrating that this is not an isolated injustice, but part of a larger system that produces injustices in daily ways. There are 4 key audience segments that the exhibit seeks to engage: local area residents, also the 42 million visitors, multi-ethnic and racial who come to the park each year, the media, and helping them to acknowledge their past responsibility in connection with the case, and to reimagine how they report about largely Black and brown criminal defendants so that they embrace the presumption of innocence in their coverage. Engaging the youth, also teaching them about the scourge of wrongful convictions and how racism defeats the presumption of innocence and help them to be engaged in social change. Desired takeaways for visitors is to reflect on the human cost of systemic racism and explore the roles and responsibilities of individuals, society, and government when confronting racism, injustice, and institutionalized inequities. And also to educate the public about what led to the conviction and the subsequent exoneration of the Central Park Five, including the historical context about policing in New York City at that time and what is going on today as well. We want to also acknowledge the media that was responsible and to encourage more of this. The exhibit criteria which we came up with is to envision a physical and permanent exhibit that could be encountered at or near a threshold into the northern end of Central Park or inside of the park itself. It should be inviting and pervade a sense of community ownership. The presumption of innocence was totally disregarded, and the imprisonment ordeal and subsequent family suffering should be designed to be powerful but palatable to the viewing experience. The blatant racism should be graphically exemplified with Donald Trump's full-page ads in the media as part of the middle section of the exhibition. Generous use of color should permeate the graphics throughout. We also are looking at an accompanying exhibit which can educate about major criminal justice reforms that have been accomplished and also provide for advocacy for criminal justice reform. I'm sorry, and social justice reform. An exonerated 5 commemoration could be linked to the following programs in terms of education and Central Park monuments with the objective of raising awareness and sensitivity to a systemic and institutionalized pattern of racial justice and need for reform. We have the Seneca Village tie-in, the Women's Suffrage Monument. Ida B. Wells was a woman suffragette who also was an anti-lynching advocate at a time when thousands of people were being lynched, predominantly people of color, Black people. The Marion J. Sims statue replacement. And all this is to show the tie-in and how there is a historical pattern here and how we need to begin to change that and so that it doesn't continue. Also the New York Historical Society tie-in, they have a very extensive exhibit on the history of Seneca Village. And the Rikers Public Memory Project, which is an advocacy program for criminal justice reform and is advocating for the closure of Rikers Island, which has a history of, has been notorious for overcrowding, violence, abuse, substandard and inhumane conditions. We have advocates, we have different organizations that are working with us towards the advocacy of this project, and also lawmakers. And we have the support of our borough president, our illustrious borough president, who's been very, very helpful with this. We are using this as a forum for advocacy for social justice reform legislature. So these are some of the, we have the Wrongfully Convicted Recovery Act, and the eliminating qualified immunity, which is legislation that is being advocated for. As we vetted this issue extremely thoroughly. We held public discussion panels over the summer, and our panelists included Sarah Burns, filmmaker, Malik Yoba, actor, author, and activist, Dr. Yusef Salam, member of the Exonerated Five, Mrs. Sharon Salam, mother of Yusef Salam, and co-founder of the Justice for the Wrongfully Incarcerated. We had Jay Larry, a corporate attorney, Ricardo Barreto, independent cultural community consultant specializing in public art process. Cynthia Copeland, president of the Institute for the Exploration of Seneca Village History, who shared her experience, the experience of in the process involved in getting the Seneca Village project in place, which is temporary right now, but we're in talks for a permanent commemoration. And also Vincent Sutherland, executive director of NYU Center on Racial Inequality and the Law. Rebecca Brown, director of policy of the Innocence Project. Dr. Ademola Olugbafola, vice president of International Communications and Harlem Dwyer Cultural Center. Brenda Berkman, director of the Monumental Women's Board of Directors. Myself, and Isaiah Jenkins, Manhattan Borough Director, Office of Mayor de Blasio. So in terms of our outreach and vetting of the issue, we first had responded to the community voicing and a request to have this exhibit brought to fruition, and that was on October 2nd of 2019. We then went on and we had meetings on these dates, December through May. These meetings were facilitated. Community Board 10 formed a subcommittee, on March 25th. Yes, and then we went on to have these subsequent, I'm sorry, I'm rushing through this pretty quickly. So on Community Board 10 voted to authorize the formation of a permanent Parks and Recreation Committee after previous meetings that were where we vetted the situation in committee on December 11th, January 12th, and February 12th. I'm sorry, January 22nd, February 12th, and March 11th. And then on June 3rd, I'm sorry, is it June 3rd? Okay. So on June the 3rd, we passed a resolution. It was passed unanimously by the full board. Facts and opinions were solicited on New York City's Art in the Parks program and its policies and projects, and will be implemented to develop a comprehensive picture of the program, whatever that commemoration will be. Focus groups were also held and facilitated by Manhattan Community Board 10, and these are the public panel discussions I mentioned previously. They were held on July 9th, July 16th, and July 23rd of this year. Manhattan Community Board 10 Parks and Recreation, Exonerated 5 and Social Justice Subcommittee instituted a walkthrough group consisting of subcommittee members. They met on Thursday, August 13th and Saturday, August 15th to do the walkthrough. Their findings concluded the following: that they would establish they established selection criteria, that the route that people would have entered the park in 1989 be considered in the siting of the commemoration, that it be accessible to park visitors, and that the site would be least intrusive to the integrity of the park setting and respective of the Central Park mission. So as a result of that selection criteria, the group came up with the recommended site of 110th Street and 5th Avenue at the entrance to the park. And so that would be the site selection. And in terms of next steps, so we are at the point where we have developed our statement of objectives and goals, and we are, and we had our board unanimously approved this presentation, which I'm showing you today, which we will be presenting to the Central Park Conservancy, New York City Parks, and subsequently the Public Design Commission, New York City Landmarks Commission, the Office of the Mayor, and the Office of the Manhattan Borough President. And with that, I thank you for your patience. And that is the end of my presentation. And I'm welcome to take any questions. I welcome you to welcome all of your questions. So I'll stop screen sharing now.
Thank you. And
You're welcome.
That was terrific, very dense, and evidenced an extremely long and thoughtful planning process that led us to where we are now. The first thing I'll do is ask whether there are any members of our committee who have any questions that they want to bring up for the guests. And I don't know if I can see raised hands. I don't. Cody, do you see raised hands? I don't have access.
No, I don't see any raised hands from our board members, committee
Okay.
members.
Are there any members of the public who would like to ask questions or make comments about this issue? You can raise your Zoom hands. With no hands, the question on the table is whether we want to prepare a resolution in support of this initiative. And it could be as a very simple resolution that simply says we endorse the initiative as proposed by Manhattan Community Board 10. Is there any discussion about that question, whether we should do that?
Rich, it looks like the two questions from members of the public have.
Oh, okay. Let's take those.
There,
are they in the Q&A?
Yes, there's one from Mark B and one from Gail A.
I'm sorry for that. Community member Mark Busanich asks where the installation will be in the park, as far as we know at this time.
We're looking at 110th Street and near Fifth Avenue in the area of the Dana Lawn. Okay,
that's great. Thank you. There's Gail Accardi indicated that she has a question. She says she put it in, but I don't know if it's been answered I'm looking through the answered questions.
Rich, I chatted it to you.
Oh, okay, great. Hang on. Okay, the question is, I understand that the northeast part of Central Park, the area that we're talking about, is due for significant improvements. And the question is whether this project is in coordination with those improvements.
We expect to be meeting with Chris Nolan of the Central Park, and who works with the Central Park Conservancy and is working on that Harlem-Mere Lasker Pool project. So we will be speaking with them in how we can incorporate the commemoration. Okay, thank you. Are there other questions from or comments from members of the public, or anything that members of our board would like to say about this?
Rich, it looks like Rosie from the Borough President's Office would like to speak.
Oh, excellent. Rosie Mendez, please speak.
Hi, I didn't want to interrupt and I wanted to be acknowledged, but I didn't have a raise hand function. Thank you, everyone. I'm here on behalf of Manhattan Borough President Gail Brewer, who is supportive of this effort. She wrote a letter in support some months back, and then this is an issue that was raised at Borough Board, particularly after these last few months where we've been living through these two pandemics, the one of social injustice and coronavirus. it seemed more than fitting that after everything we've been through, and the awareness that these young men who lost part of their childhood growing up and as teenagers, that something be done to use them as examples of the systemic and institutionalized racism that exists. So I just wanted everyone to know that the borough president is supportive, and I wanted to be here with Community Board 10 and just say these few words. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so the question on the table for us is whether we should prepare a short resolution in support to be. If it's simple, we can probably caucus before full board and then submit it for full board at the next full board meeting. I don't know what the process is for deciding this. It's not really an issue we need to vote on, is it?
We will have to caucus at full board, a full board if somebody just writes a quick reso, and if we can have a volunteer who wants to write it, that'd be great. And then and then we can vote on it right before full board.
Okay.
If I could just add, having a resolution that was passed and is in writing will be helpful when Community Board 10 goes forward through their process and meets with the Arts Commission, who would have to approve of anything that is done in Central Park.
Great. So do we have a committee member that wants to volunteer to write this resolution?
Corinne, Kyle has his hand raised.
Sorry, who?
Kyle.
Kyle. Okay. Hi, Kyle. Are you volunteering? Or do you have a question?
No, quick comment plus question. If we vote right now to support it, do we need to caucus before? If we say that we would write a simple resolution in support of it, that might be able to avoid a quick caucus before the meeting?
I was actually told that we cannot vote on it without at least a draft reso. So, I mean, we can do an unofficial vote just so that Karen and Cicely know what to expect. But it would not be the official vote just yet. It would just be kind of seeing.
So you're saying
okay, yeah, just clarifying.
So
the vote would be on whether we should proceed to write a resolution.
Correct.
Okay, I'd support that idea.
Anju has her hand raised. Corinne or Rich?
Yeah, hey, yeah, I was gonna offer that I'd love to help write the resolution. I think it's a great initiative. And then I also did have a question, if there was any consideration of who the artist would be to actually move forward in building the sculpture itself, and if there's consideration of ideally like being like a person, like a Black or brown, someone who's like personally affected by the issue.
Well, at this point, we are looking at having a art selection process, which would involve an outreach to artists. And what's the breadth of that outreach, we're not sure of at this point. So we would be looking at doing the outreach process.
Sorry, I was on mute. So can I propose that we make a motion to have a draft resolution written?
second, can the chair second?
Seconded.
Okay.
Okay. So
I'm sorry, can I just ask if you could amend that to also say a draft resolution in support?
oh yes, in support.
Okay,
I thought that was implied, but that's absolutely the intention. So let's make that explicit. So we have a motion on the table. Cody, do you want to take a vote, or do we take a hand raise vote?
Sure, we can do a vote by roll call. Committee members, I'll call your name. Please unmute yourself and declare in favor, against, abstain, or not entitled on this resolution. Kyle Athide.
In favor.
Joan Barenbaum.
Favor.
Claire Brennan.
Favor.
Andrew Gross. Has Andrew joined? I don't see that he has. Abigail Cruzmark.
In favor.
Rich Mintz.
In favor.
Karen Moore. Has Karen joined? Raj Nair.
In favor.
Matt Roberts.
In favor.
Andrew Suresh.
Favor.
Corinne Vanderdonk.
Favor.
Jeff Zellen. Has Jeff joined? Nope. Okay, so that brings you to 9 in favor, 0 against, 0 abstentions, and 0 not entitled.
Excellent. So that's good news. We will take care of that resolution, and we'll talk about it at the next meeting. Corinne, I'm bouncing back to you.
Well,
Or are
thank
you bouncing right back to me?
no, but first I do want to really thank Karen and Cicely, I'm sorry. Again for this wonderful presentation, and thank you so much.
Thank you all for having us. I apologize. I do have to go to our health committee now, but thank you so much. And you all have my information. So if you want to email or either text me, call me, I'll make sure you have that, my email and Karen's.
Right. Thank you. And
Thank you so much. And I'd just like to say thank you to Andrew for volunteering to draft the proposal, the resolution. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
All right. So Corinne, are we going on with the next agenda item?
Yes, we're going on to agenda item 2, which you will be leading as well. Thank you, Rich.
All right, thank you. So the second agenda item is a brief discussion of 421A fraud by landlords in Community District 6. And I'm just going to give a little of background, and then we can have a brief discussion about this. In terms of background, you may be familiar with the 421A tax abatement program, and that it's a program that gives developers of rental housing tax breaks, tax abatements for a period of years if they build buildings in certain places under certain conditions where the city is trying to encourage housing. And, as a condition of the tax benefits, the owners of the buildings are required to register the units that they build as rent stabilized. And there are rules, including for some of the units, AMI rules that set mandated limits on the rent that they can charge for units that are required to be registered as affordable. So that's the background. We are aware that there is a lot of fraud around the administration of the 421A problem on the part of landlords, specifically in a couple of ways. The most, one of the common ways is that the owners just don't register units as rent stabilized, or the units fall out of the rent stabilization system and they revert to market rate or arbitrary increases, even though they're not permitted to. And another thing that they do is they register units in the system, but they register them with starting rents that are illegally high. So the baseline is inflated, and the first tenant and all subsequent tenants end up being overcharged above what the law permits. There's not very much investigation or enforcement because the city and state agencies involved in managing this, as we know from previous work, are highly understaffed. You may recall that about a year ago, we discussed an issue where the DOB and city and state housing agencies weren't coordinating on the enforcement of rent control and rent stabilization, which led to buildings, developers being approved for buildings who did not qualify based on their past history of rent stabilization. So we know that false filings by landlords are falling through the cracks. And if overcharges or shenanigans by landlords can be proven in court, developers can face penalties, the building owners can face penalties, and overcharges, this is the important part, overcharges can be returned to the current tenant and back tenants going back about 6 years. So we wanted to know whether the extent to which this was happening in Community District 6. So we contacted Housing Rights Initiative, which is a tenant watchdog agency that specializes in enforcing the legal rights of tenants. We talked to Aaron Carr and a couple of his colleagues about this, and they did some research in public records, and they identified right away 2 buildings in Community District 6 that are likely to be committing offenses that are resulting in overcharges. And this is not by any means the total list. These are just 2 that he was able to find right away. For your information, the buildings are 222 East 40th Street with 372 units. This is a big building near 2nd Avenue. And then the other one is 242 East 25th Street, which is on the southwest corner of 2nd Avenue and 24th Street and 25th Street. I can almost see it out my window. And this one has 54 units. It was built in 2006. The first building, the larger one, is the most interesting because they say it's probably going to be the simplest to prove violations, because they were able to discover immediately that the building was advertised with rent reductions, so that the net effective rent was lower than the actual amount that was charged. And this would mean that they established the base rent based on the reduced rent, based on the higher rent rather than the reduced rent, and this is illegal. So, this would have resulted in overcharges, not just for the first tenant, but subsequent tenants. So HRI, Housing Rights Initiative, is willing to provide us with legal support if we do some investigation and research, including by reaching out to tenants to get some more information about their rent histories. And we wanted to get the sense of the group about whether this is something that we want to pursue. Corinne or Cody, is there anything that you would like to add to that basic introduction of the situation?
No, thank you, Rich. I just maybe want to add that I think historically CB6 has not agreed to 421A tax reduction certificates, and I believe Claude can speak to that a little bit because he explained it to me when I joined the Community Board 6.
So 2 things I would add to what Rich said, and just to clarify and give as many caveats as possible, which is what Aaron wanted us to make sure. They can't guarantee that there's any sort of fraudulent activity. They just, drawing on their past experience, look for potential red flags that would lead them to believe that there is fraudulent activity. The only way that fraudulent activity can be proven is if the tenants themselves request their rent history from the State Department of Housing and Community Renewal. So no one will be able to prove anything unless tenants request their own rent history, and then they either read it themselves, and it can be a confusing document, or they are willing to share it with us and Housing Rights Initiative, and we look for those patterns of fraudulent activity.
Can I just share something?
Yeah, Claude, you have your hand up. Please go ahead.
if you choose to do this at another time, then I can share a little bit of what I know about it. But I would highly suggest that you take a look at the Toll Brothers building. I think it's on East 21st Street or East 22nd Street. It's the Toll Brothers, and I think it's 160 is the address. It's right on the corner.
Is that the one that's on the corner by the police station?
Yeah, it's on the corner. No, not by the police station, but it's either 22nd Street or
It's next to a public school.
Oh, 160 East 22nd. I see where it is. Yes,
Yeah.
I know this building.
that building. They never came to our 421 hearings, and we didn't even know that it had 421 in it when it opened up. So I would suggest you take a look at that building.
Okay.
We'll add that. So Rich, what are we looking for volunteers to do? What are we looking to do?
I think, Cody, correct me if I'm misunderstanding this, but I think what we need is some volunteers to do some outreach to people in buildings that we are considering looking at, right?
Yes. So as you mentioned, Aaron and his team, so that they could not do the outreach component of this, but we're happy to provide the analysis of rental histories, and if there is fraudulent activity suggested on those rental histories, connect tenants with legal providers that they work with. What we would need to do would be outreach to the buildings to get the tenants to request their own rental history from the state, and then be willing to share that rental history with us and the Housing Rights Initiative. So it's our job would be outreach, and Housing Rights Initiative also said that they would, if we wanted to, do a mass mailing or something like that, that we could draft the language, and they would happily review any language on a mailing before we sent it out.
So really, I guess first I need to ask, are there any comments or questions about this from members of the committee? And I don't think I see anyone gesturing. Are there any members of the public that want to ask about this or have questions about it? I'm looking in the Q&A for any indication, and not seeing any. So the question on the table is, do we proceed, and is there anyone who would like to volunteer to be part of planning an outreach effort to the residents of one or more buildings? And I note for the record that we'll look at the building that Claude Winfield suggested to see whether the HRI people think that it is also a candidate.
Thank you, Claude. Joan, is this something maybe that you want to take on, since this was part of your expertise? Oh, you're muted.
The chair of 421 Tenants Coalition back in the 70s. So I hate to date myself. If somebody could explain exactly what you want me to do, I'd be happy to do it. I don't exactly understand what.
Well, the goal here is for us to get access to the rental histories of some of the tenants of these buildings, so that we can establish whether there has been any malfeasance. And that requires us to make contact with some of those people, for instance, by sending them a letter, and invite them to get in touch with us with information about their rental histories. And it's not at all coercive. The goal is to let them know that there is a possibility that we might be able to help them in an action against their landlord and get more information from them.
And how do we access this list?
You mean, how do we know who they are? I
Yeah.
think we
Reach out to them.
I think we use public records to try to figure out who owns the units.
Mail, I believe,
I
right?
mean, who lives in the
Send them
units.
a letter, right?
When we've done mass mailings in the past, we do a mass mailing to like a current resident, and using voter rolls, we can often see kind of the naming system that a building uses for its apartments and how many apartments are on each floor, and we can do our best to figure out, do they go apartment 1 through 5, or is it ABC, 4A, whatever their naming convention might be. And we could mail just to every current resident.
So Cody, you could help me with that.
Yes.
Okay.
All right. So I think, Corinne, we've closed out this topic. Thank you very much for volunteering. And just for the record, I'm happy to help also, Cody. So put me on the list if you need additional help. Rosie Mendez has her physical hand raised.
Hi, I just wanted to add Brian Lafferty, who's the liaison to this board. He and I will be reaching out to Holly Chu, who's our housing policy person, and to see what else can be done. And Joan, I could, either I or Holly or Brian will get back to you, and maybe we could help you figure out how to go about getting accessing some of this information.
Thanks.
So I just wanted to make that offer.
Thank you, Rosie.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're going to number 3, the chair's report. I want to encourage everyone, including members of the public, to start collecting donations, which Cody will screen share in a second, exactly what we're looking for. This is for the ACS Children's Center on First Avenue, and the BRC shelter Safe Haven on at the temporary Safe Haven at the Vanderbilt Y. So at the Vanderbilt Y, because those are single adults, we are looking for books, many books, any kind of non-electronic kind of single activities. So Sudoku, paper pens, things like that. And if you have any of those to donate, please contact the office and we will coordinate how to get those donations to the Vanderbilt Y. For the ACS Center, especially with Christmas coming around pretty soon and colder weather, ACS is looking for gloves, hats, warm socks, duffel bags or suitcases, so that they can go from the ACS to their new placement in style, as opposed to with a garbage bag. And then they're also very much looking for graphic novels, multiple copies, because the kids take them with them when they leave the ACS to go to their foster placement. And again, contact the office if you have any of those to donate. Number 3 is number 2 is the impending eviction moratorium that is essentially being lifted. The executive order by Governor Cuomo was unclear, and that has resulted the state court resuming evictions again, and it will be left up to the individual judges whether or not somebody can be evicted. There is going to be months of delay, but any cases that were in front of the court in March will be picked up again, and that's about 15,000 cases right now. So there is going to be this tsunami of evictions potentially. We really need to keep our eye on that. We have to think as a committee how we can assist in any way. Which brings me to shelters, and very briefly, I will talk about our very first CB6 family shelter. We do not have a family shelter yet at CB6, and I'll give you some details what this will be. This is at 118 East 40th Street. It's between Lex and Park. It's 170 units. It will be, the service provider will be CORE, which is an excellent provider. There's going to be, CORE will be providing a lot of services. There's going to be 24-hour security. There's going at least 3, how much do we have? There is going to be a lot of case management. There's going to be a 24-hour open line for the community to provide feedback to CORE if there's any issues. Now, and to explain, this is an adult family shelter, and what that's going to look like. And again, talking about the evictions, you know, this could be an elderly couple with a adult child that has disabilities. It could be a adult family that has their is taking care of their parents, their elderly parents. We will talk more about this come November. We will invite CORE and the service provider and the Department of Homeless Services to be there as well.
Corinne, Claude has his hand raised.
Claude?
I just want to give you some information. I don't want to sound like I'm correcting you, but there is a small family unit in 30th Street.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that.
You can use that and you can check it out and get an idea how they run it.
And that's run by CORE?
No, I don't know. It's DHS, but there's been one there for a little while.
Okay, good to know. Thank you. I don't have that info. Any other questions from committee members?
Abby has her hand raised.
I'm sorry, who?
Abby.
Abby. Hi, Abby.
Hi. I was just wondering, so is this temporary pandemic shelter or permanent shelter?
It's a permanent shelter.
Okay, thank you.
Any other committee members have any comments? Again, we'll speak about this more in November. We'll get more details. Rich, do you feel, let me see, are there any questions about this in the Q&A? Rich, have you been fielding the questions in the Q&A?
Yeah, as of right now, we only have a couple. You know, we have time for like 3 or 4 questions. I'll start reading them.
Great.
Mark Lucas says that this can't be kicked to November. I mean, we will put it on the agenda for November because we need to actually get the people here in order to give answers to us. Steve Salinaro asks how this affects the neighborhood, taxes, and crime. You know, I think these are questions that are better offered to the people in who are involved in the city. But you know, as we know, our crime levels have been basically stable or dropping. in the 13th and 17th. So, you know, there is unlikely to be a significant impact on crime. There's a question about the date, and that I think, Cody, we have some information on, don't we?
All we know right now is that the shelter, they're planning to open the shelter in December. We don't have any specific date as to the beginning of the month, end of the month, if those plans have changed in the last few weeks since they announced this. Again, that's a question that you can ask DHS next month when they have agreed to come to the meeting.
A couple more questions. There's a question about what security measures CORE will be utilized. The one thing we do know is that there will be 24-hour security. I think beyond that, we're going to have to ask them when they come.
Rich, I can just kind of quickly from an email. CORE wrote, a minimum of 3 security officers will be located at entrance to control building access and to monitor security cameras, which will be located throughout the building and grounds. There will be a minimum of 7 security staff per shift and 1 supervisor overseeing security staff per shift. And then there's a 10 p.m. curfew.
Okay, so that would mean that residents will have to be in by 10 p.m., right? That's
Correct.
The idea. Okay, all right. There's one more question here that I want to raise, which is how do families get housing in the hotel? Will there be medical issues such as drug addiction and other mental health issues? And what we know from past temporary shelters is that typically these shelters exclude people with any sort of criminal issues, and anyone who has a drug addiction issue is dealt with by supportive services that are alongside the residents. But I think it's unlikely that since this is a family shelter, that it's going to be a mental health treatment facility. It's a residence for families. We probably need to wait for CORE, though, to talk to them about their specific criteria for admission and what kind of rules they have to make sure that people who have issues that can't be supported by the services are housed somewhere else.
Yes, and then I'd like to thank you, Rich. I'd like to add that I assume that the main qualification is that these people, these families and these vulnerable people will not end up living on our streets, but will have a roof over their head and will be provided a chance to find a permanent housing while they're at the shelter.
Can I raise one more issue, because I think it's an important one from the Q&A? And then I know you have to move on. We have a community member who has worked in the past in the New York State Office of Mental Health. He has a couple of concerns, given that these shelters typically are predominantly the homes of single moms with kids. He wants to make sure that there are steps that the provider would take to ensure that the children who are resident in the shelter have access to either learning either at home or in school. So that's I wanted to get that on the record.
It's adult families, not
oh, okay, it's only adult families.
This shelter is adult families.
Okay, got it. And then secondly, the question is, would we have access to program deliverables and benchmarks so we could monitor the progress of the program? And that, I believe the answer is yes, based on our experience with other shelters, but that's another thing that we need to raise with CORE. And there are a couple of other questions that he asked that I think we can ask. I can answer. I can type an answer to here.
It's back to me, right?
Yes.
Yes, thank you. Well, thank you, Rich. And just I saw a few questions. Is this a done this is a done deal. We have no input in this. We are simply conveying what we are being told, and we're trying to disseminate information to the community. This is not something that we can influence for not happening or the other way around. So for old and new business, yeah, I would like to like I mentioned, something about evictions. You know, what we could do if somebody can think of that, and let me, either me or Rich, know. And if there's any other questions, Jeff?
I don't know if this goes into new business. The resolution that we had talked about that arose from the meeting, that Zoom call with Carlina Rivera, and you had asked me to work on that. Is something that we mentioned in the context of new business, or I don't know what the...
Yeah, no, great. You mean about the
Yes.
where we are discussing
the CLTs?
Yes, great. Yes, that will be on. Yeah, thank you, Jeff, for reminding me. Yes, I want to put that on the agenda for November as well, in support of Carlina's legislation that local. What is it again, Jeff? It's local businesses.
Yeah, so it's the Community Opportunity to Purchase Act, nicknamed COPA, C-O-P-A, and that would give community land trusts, CLTs, and nonprofit affordable housing developers 30 days notice of sales and a right of first refusal when landlords decide to sell apartment buildings, and that would be in an effort to increase affordable housing inventories and maintain properties as affordable housing by providing a right of first refusal to CLTs and other nonprofit affordable housing. And it's been, it was introduced and it's now been sent to committee. I believe that's where it is right now. And you know, our Carlina is, Rivera is the sponsor. So I was going to do a draft of a resolution to, and I don't know how you want to do that in terms of circulating a draft or.
Thank you so much, Jeff, thank you for volunteering the draft today. Yes, and we should, Cody and Rich, we should make a mental note to put this on the November agenda as well.
And Abby has a hand.
Abby?
Hi, I just want to flag that community land trusts have been, I've heard a presentation by the New Economy Project on them, and they might be good sort of technical assistance. I think they have a consortium of community land trusts that they support through policy advocacy. So I'm not quite sure how that would factor into Carlina's resolution, but we might want to sort of take a look at that also.
Right now, I've just been Katie Loeb and last name Unger, and I'm blanking on his first name. From Carlina's office sent me some materials, including an op-ed that was published recently in the Gothamer. But yeah, I'll follow up. What was the name again?
It's New Economy Project.
Yeah.
We still have their presentation from when they came before us. Jeff, I can send that to you.
Thank you. So I guess this is old business, just because I saw one of the questions, like how much does it cost to provide temporary shelters to people? It costs a lot, and so which is why in our upcoming statement of needs, one of our statements is that we think that it is imperative that we start building affordable, deeply affordable housing, supportive housing, affordable senior housing, permanent, that are permanent, and that this will be stabilize families, and it will be fiscally more responsible to provide permanent affordable housing, provide temporary shelter. So with that, I'm asking for a motion to adjourn. Joan.
I second Joan's motion.
So moved.
Oh, thank you, Joan. Seeing no further business, this meeting is adjourned at 7:44 p.m. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you.